Depression. It's seen as the common cold among mental illness. Most people have it at some point in their life, and some people have it chronically. But is it more biological, something that's just in our genes, or is it something we learn and we could therefore have some more control over and change? It's more psychological. Hold on, and I'll answer these two questions and give you some information on how to deal with your depression no matter what the root cause is. Hold on. Hi, I'm Dr. Monte Miller. I'm a licensed psychologist. I've been working for, it's coming up to 30 years doing counseling overall since my master's program, and about 22 years as a doctorate level. And I've been doing primarily work with people with severe traumas, people who have lost terrible losses in their life, lost loved ones, severe health problems, chronic pain, loss of their independence, loss of their jobs. Just people with just horrendous storms you can't even begin to imagine. And my job is to help them cope with it and make it the best as possible. So I have a lot of experience dealing with depression, and like I said, sometimes I deal with a lot of people who have had severe problems, but they're doing all right. They don't necessarily need my help, at least not for that. And I've learned from them and studied them, and through the years I've learned from so much of my elderly residents and my handicapped residents and all my people that I've helped with severe problems. I learned from them, and I want to apply that knowledge to you guys. So if you could, please subscribe to my channel. It would help me out a lot. Click the thumbs up if you like this video and watch it till the end. There's really good stuff about depression in here to come. I'll try to make this short though. Okay, so the big question of the day is depression biological or psychological? Some people think, well, if I'm saying that your depression is psychological, I'm somehow saying you're mentally ill and you're crazy. No, when I'm just saying psychological, I mean it's due to the thoughts in your head. It's how you think about your life, how you think about your situation. It doesn't mean something's wrong with you at all. If your spouse dies or your child dies or someone close to you dies, you're going to be depressed. That's a normal reaction, but it is psychological. You are reacting and you're thinking sad thoughts to what happened. Versus, okay, but let's start with depression as a biological condition. Is it a medical condition? Is it a disease? Of all the diseases out there, I think depression is fascinating because it's probably the most clear-cut thing that's doesn't fit the mold. It's really a lot of one and it's a lot of the other. And usually it's a continuum from one end to the other. Some people's depressions really are biological. They have genes that make them more depressed, or they have some other medical condition that slows their body down, slows their thinking down, slows their emotions, dulls their emotions. And so it's just so easy for them to get depressed. And there's not much they did to deserve it. It's just how they were born. Like some people were born tall, some people born short. Some people are born more manic and hyper and they have lots of energy, and some are more mellow and calm. Some are more anxious. So yes, our personalities are definitely shaped by our genes. I didn't want to believe this at first when I was first a psychologist. I wanted to think everything was psychological. You could relearn and retrain the brain and everything. And I've come to learn that no, there's a lot of genetics that are involved into it. That doesn't mean that there's a lot you can't do about it psychologically, and I'll get to that in a minute. But a lot of things really are biological. As a psychologist, we always want to do things thinking and without medications, but sometimes medications are needed. When I'm working with my other populations that I work with clinically, a lot of them are on medications. Some I question and wonder if they really need the medicines or need as much as they're on. Some doctors, I think, give medicines way too much, but definitely some people need it. So if this is you, and one way to tell, how can you tell if you're biological? It's hard. You look at your family genes, and we'll never fully know exactly where we are. We just have to kind of guess and kind of work with it. But if your life is generally happy and you're pretty content with what's going on, but you just can't help but feel depressed, maybe that's biological. So it's something you would consider. But I'll get to the flip side in a few minutes about the thinking part of it, the psychological part. But for the now, if you think that's possibly biological, you do need to see your medical doctor. And if it's anything complex at all, you really should see a licensed psychiatrist, one with good reviews and good ratings. There are some bad there's some bad psychiatrists and psychologists. There's bad every doctors out there, but you have to be careful and make sure you have a good one that doesn't want to throw pills at you automatically. That's a big criteria. A lot of people come to me and they'll sit there and say, "Hey, Dr. Miller, can you give me some pills?" I'm just overwhelmed with everything. And they wanted an easy way out. Sometimes they know, sometimes they don't know that I am not a psychiatrist. I'm not a medical doctor. I can't prescribe medications. I talk with people. But they always wanted medications. No one wants to sit down and talk things out. They want a pill. They want things out. And that's kind of our society of a quick fix. And yes, like I said, there's times when it's needed. But the other flip side of it is psychological. Is it in your control? Is it due to a way you're thinking? And my presupposition is at least halfway, that little continuum scale of medical versus psychological. I think everything's a little bit psychological. And even if you have a strong medical component that makes you more depressed, you've learned how to deal with the problems from a depressed viewpoint of life. And so that shapes how you then start thinking about yourself and about life. And so it becomes psychological. And you certainly can use your thinking to challenge yourself, to look at things on the bright side of things, to appreciate things, to do all the other techniques that I try to use in these videos to try to bring lift your spirits up. Medications alone, even if you're very much medical depression, medications alone are not going to fix all your problems. You've got to look at the way you see yourself, see the world, see around you, see others. If y'all watched my videos before, you probably get a sense that you know that I'm a cognitive behavioral therapist. That means I believe that for the most part, our mind controls our emotions. Your brain, your thinking, what you choose to think, then leads to emotions. You don't have an anxious emotion. You're not getting scared unless you first have some kind of, oh no, this is bad kind of thought and pop into your head. And you don't get angry unless you have some kind of thought like, this is not fair, that's not right, I demand better. And then you don't have some kind of depressed emotion unless you feel some kind of hopeless or helpless kind of emotion, some kind of negative expectations about what's going on in life. That brings about depression feelings and emotions. And so, but the trick is us humans, we're amazing creatures. We are so smart and so silly and stupid all at the same time, all of us. It's just kind of a natural thing. We have tons of thoughts going through our head all the time. We have tons of assumptions about life going through our head. And it's hard to figure out those things. Those things are built into us from a young age that we didn't even realize we've learned. But we have tape recorded messages in our head that are playing. That when someone does something to us, we already assume that they mean this because in our past, people who are like that did this. And so it's just naturally how we think. But those aren't always the best rationalizations. They're not the best sources of information, not the best use of logic to figure out if we really should feel those emotions or not. Let's say, for example, a husband does something a little thoughtless or selfish with his wife, and she gets mad and she storms, just like, you're no good so-and-so, you always treat me bad, you're a terrible husband, I hate you. And in reality, though, he did 9 good things during the day, and most of the times he's a pretty good husband, but he did one thing that was really kind of sucky. Not really bad, like cheating or anything, just a little thoughtless. And did she jump the gun? Yeah. But in her mind, in that time, she made logical thoughts in her head. He is no good and he's going to take advantage of me. And I have to defend myself and take care of myself. And if I don't, then things are going to get bad. So I better yell at him to put him in line. But she didn't take all the things into account. That's how we use logic. We think so many thoughts in our head that we're not even aware we're thinking. And yet some of those thoughts aren't always helpful or rational. I said earlier that maybe it's more of a medical depression if your life is going pretty well and yet you find yourself depressed anyway. That could be true. But using the cognitive behavioral formula that we talked about with your thoughts, maybe it's true. And I don't want to point fingers and say, shame on you, you're being bad. But in order to fight depression, we have to take an honest look at ourselves. We have to really look and analyze what are the thoughts we're telling ourselves. And could they not be helpful? Are they leading us down the road to more depression? Are they helping us solve our problems and dealing with it as best as possible? We have to look at those questions. But sometimes you have to admit to yourself that sometimes our thoughts are not just irrational or not helpful, but sometimes downright selfish, sometimes downright sinful. As a Christian, we have to analyze our thoughts and say, am I being prideful in any kind of way? Am I putting my needs ahead of others, my needs ahead of God's? Am I demanding something from God? Am I not appreciating all the good things He's given me? we have to really look at those hard questions. And that's my biggest role, I think, as a Christian psychologist is, can I help people feel heard and understood, give them love and support and sympathy, empathy and understanding, and yet at the same time push them to a higher level to look at their thoughts, to get them over that hump. And sometimes that means slap them upside the head and say, stop doing what you're doing. It's not working. Do this, and maybe it'll help you feel better. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to let go of our thoughts. There's some reason why we want that thought to hold on to. It's much more complex, and look at some of my posts on depression, and you can understand this better. I mean, on dealing with coping with grief and loss and dying and accepting what we can't change. These a lot of things deal with our thoughts. But going back to the person I said maybe their life's going well, but they're still depressed, so is it medical? Maybe, but what if this person's kind of on the spoiled side or selfish side? They've had a nice, cushy life. They grew up with a little bit of money and they had good parents always taking care of them, but they're a little spoiled and their mom and dad gave them too much without disciplining them. Now you're going to have an adult who's expects things to be really perfect, really right. They believe that if I do all this, then I should be perfectly happy. Or maybe they're a little comparing. If I'm not thin and beautiful like that supermodel, then I can't be happy. No one will really love me. If I don't achieve as much of my career or job as much as my friends did in high school, then somehow I'm not worth as much. And so, there's all kinds of things that we can look at that we're thinking in our head that brings us down and depressed. Even though our lives might be pretty good, it may not be as good as we expected it to be. Looking at your expectations is a big strategy that I use to try to help people figure things out. What are you expecting? Maybe this person who's depressed is expecting more than is realistic because of what their childhood taught them. So that's part of what I have to do is figure that out. So maybe it's not biological depression. Maybe it's just the ways that they've thought their whole life. And they have to really dig into those thoughts and figure that out. So it's not easy to figure out. There really is biological depression. And, my family members have had that and suffered with it. And I understand it. But at the same time, you've got to push yourself harder and harder. That's a big part of this channel, and I don't want to get into too many other examples here, but I want you to really understand, though, that if you're suffering with depression, or if you know someone else who's suffering depression, they really need therapy. It's no shame in doing therapy. We can't figure out our own mind all the time. I can't. There's a lot of times I have to talk with somebody. I'm talking to my wife and I'm sharing my problems, and all of a sudden it's sometimes she gives me good advice and helps me look at it a different way. Sometimes I just getting it off my chest, I figure it out myself. Oh, maybe I need to do this. Maybe doing Bible studies, reading scriptures, of course, listening to other sermons that can cause me to, you know what, now I think about it, I'm really not giving that to God, am I? I'm really holding on and not trusting Him as much as I should. There's all kinds of ways spiritually, scripturally, to look at our thoughts and try to figure those out. I meant to say this earlier. One of the best scriptures I love is, as a man thinketh, so is he. Proverbs 23:7, I believe. And that's a fundamental thing. And there's all kinds, especially in Proverbs, there's all kinds of verses about how we think and how that affects us. And so I'm really a big believer in therapy. I've done the therapy myself several times. There's no shame in it. I can help you find a therapist in your area. But please, I'm available for online counseling as well. So please feel look at my website and look me up and see if I could help. There's a free 15-minute video session. You just click on, and it's real easy. You just go to my website, click the buttons. Walks you right through it. You don't have to know much about computers to set this up and get it going. And you can try it out to see if it's comfortable for you. Look at my other video on online counseling and when it's right and better. And look at my other video on Christian counseling and what that means for you, and if that's right for you. So I hope this is helpful. I hope you can distinguish a little bit more of depression from a medical standpoint versus a psychological standpoint. There's so many more details, but those are for other videos. So here's hoping you find peace in your storm. God bless you all. Please like and subscribe. Please click the little thumbs up. Share this with anybody else who you know might be dealing with depression. We all know people with depression. So please share and help me out and help them out. God bless you. Bye-bye.